Hello, everybody. My name is Rhett Martino, and I am back with Tyler Brockington, who's going to uncover what's going on with these Biden document scandals that have been all the rage on Fox News. But really, you know what? This is an important issue for us to cover, and Tyler's going to explain why. Thanks, Tyler.
The Biden document scandal, as Fox News likes to call it, is the fact that the Biden administration is currently under a special counsel investigation. And I do want to just say unequivocally, this is important. We're going to get in a minute to why this is not the same as the Trump classified document scandal and the Mar-a-Lago raid. It's not even close. But it is important to say that,
Right.
classified documents should be handled in a specific way. And so this does need to be taken seriously. But as we're going to see, the Biden administration is taking it seriously. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into it. President Biden's private attorneys found classified documents while they were searching first the Penn Biden Center and then later his home and garage. And once these documents were found, they were immediately sent to the National Archives and reported through the proper channels, which is what we love to see and what the exact right course of action should have been in this situation. And just for the record, only about 20 documents have been found thus far. And to debunk for your conservative uncle, Fox News watching family members who are going to say, it's hypocrisy or the same thing that Trump did, it's absolutely not. Biden only had about 20 documents that were found. Trump had over 160 secret documents that were classified, as well as over 60 top secret, highly classified documents in his possession. So upon this kind of discovery and it being reported through the proper channels, the Department of Justice actually assigned a Trump-appointed attorney to oversee the review. And this is an interesting choice by Attorney General Merrick Garland, and I definitely think it was done to kind of combat any partisan accusations. And the
Right.
the attorney who was appointed actually worked on national security, public corruption, and corporate fraud cases. So, you can't say that anybody's going soft on President Biden in this instance. Like, it's really being taken seriously, which is what needs to happen. That said, when we look at how the Trump team handled it, at every single turn, they tried to mislead investigators and kind of obstruct justice in multiple ways. They said that they had already returned the documents to the National Archive, even though the National Archives were the ones who were asking the Trump administration for these documents. And then, of course, it all ended in the now infamous raid of Mar-a-Lago. So two very different handlings of the situation here. The Biden administration is clearly taking accountability for this misstep, where the Trump administration is already using this opportunity to point fingers and say, see, what I did wasn't so bad, which is just not the case at all. And so the last thing I just wanted to say is that Republicans are already tripping over themselves to call this hypocrisy.
Hmm.
Kevin McCarthy, who barely won the speakership through the skin of his teeth, has already come forward saying that, people are treating President Trump one way, but treating President Biden a whole different way, which is just not the case. And President Trump was being treated a different way because he was acting differently and doing things that were way less legal. And
Right.
so we're
Yeah.
already
Like,
seeing
let's
House
put that in
Republicans.
context too of
Yeah.
oh, this was like post-insurrection, like that Trump had these documents in his, what was it, his desk in Mar-a-Lago, a public resort. It's a very different context, but these two things really can't be equated. I mean, they do come back down to the importance of these classified documents into the security of the American people, but like as you did so eloquently, the distinctions are evident. And it's so important for the
Yeah.
American people to know that. And you know what? Fox News might not tell you honestly, but here at Progress America Unfiltered, we got your back. So I think now I would love to pick your brain about the George Santos of it all that is kind of trumping through, see what I did there? Washington,
Yeah.
D.C., almost like Godzilla taking over the city. I mean, it's like even some Republicans have come out against this individual, this liar, this cheat, this kind of cartoon-esque villain that has just found residence in Washington, D.C. So, Tyler, may I ask you, what are your opinions on Mr. newly elected Representative George Santos?
Well, George Santos, if that is his real name, which it really might not be, um, has just been in the news lately for a flurry of blatant lies that have come out about everything from his history to campaign finances. So let's get into it and let's start at the very beginning. So George Santos was just elected to New York's third district, which covers some of Long Island and a little bit of Queens. I used to live in New York, so I've got to shout out Queens. And one thing
Hey.
to know is that New York Democrats kind of dropped the ball in this race. This was not really a guaranteed race for a Republican. So it's important to note that George Santos did kind of slither into this seat. And this is the consequences of our inaction, maybe we can say, for New York Democrats. So George Santos has got everything. He's a liar's dream. He's lied about pretty much every level of his education. He lied about where he went to high school, where he went to undergrad, and where he went to graduate school. And he even went as far as to lie about being a star volleyball player at the college that he didn't actually go to. It's actually wild. Like, you cannot make this up.
Unless you're
And
him.
he, I guess you could make it up, actually. Shoot
Yeah.
for the stars. And it actually came out that he never graduated from a higher learning institution, which it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that that's something that the American people could
Exactly.
actually look up to if you were honest about it. But anyway, moving on from that, he's also lied about his own personal history and background. He came out saying that he was Jewish and that his grandparents were Holocaust survivors. Then it turned out that he's Catholic but was from a Jewish family. Then it turns out no one in his family is Jewish, but he is Jew-ish. Emphasis on the ish. He also went as far as to say that his mother died in 9/11, which is a pretty serious thing to say. And then it was debunked when years later he tweeted on the actual anniversary of his mom's death, which I think was in 2016.
This is just wild that this person is now controlling um so like the national conversation in the Congress. I mean, partially so, but he has a say in what laws go into effect in this country and what real things are going to impact the American people. And like, I don't know in terms of qualifications, but I don't think being like a master liar should be one of them if you are trying to represent people effectively in the Congress. So that is just beyond frightening, Tyler. Thanks for covering it. Really appreciate it because wow, I could not make that up if I tried.
Absolutely. They say that cheaters never win, but apparently liars do, because I don't think George Santos is going anywhere. So I'm sure we'll learn a lot more about him against our will. But anyway,
Of course.
Rhett, I hear you want to tell me about the IRS. So let me have it.
Yeah, so Tyler, last week we covered the complete chaos of Republicans trying to elect a Speaker of the House. And of course, after Kevin McCarthy barely clung onto that gavel, what did he want to do? What did he want to do for the American people? Of course, it was try to gut the IRS, making it easier for his rich friends and his rich donors, all of that, to cheat taxes and harm necessary government funding. And so this GOP legislation would literally slash 9 out of $10 in new IRS funding from the Inflation Reduction Act. And like the reality of this would be it would harm social programs, it would harm so many things that the American people need in order to have, you know, some faith in the government, some support from the government to live their everyday life. So it's very frightening that this is the first thing that Republicans did, as if it was going to make anybody happy other than their rich and powerful donors. But let's be honest, that's who sent them there. They are doing the job they were sent there to do, but the Democrats in the Senate will not have it. The president will not have it, thankfully. The IRS audits low-income families at a higher rate now because it's cheaper and easier. So they need this beefed up funding to be able to go after people who have more complex tax and evasion schemes, like the rich and corporations, like former President Trump, etc. But of course, when we think about that crowd and then like the rich elite Republican donor crowd, if that was a Venn diagram, it's circle-ish. Not saying that there aren't Democrats that cheat taxes, but come on, that Venn diagram overlaps a lot, a lot. And so Republicans have been crowing about these 87,000 IRS agents that are coming after the middle class. Like, middle class, hide your taxes, the IRS is coming, but that's false. We know that these agents are mostly replacing people that are retiring over the next 10 years. And we literally need these people to answer the phone, to run the agency effective, and literally just to do the job that the American people need them to do. Secretary Yellen has made it extremely clear that the funding will be used to go after the wealthiest tax cheats, which literally benefits the middle class, benefits those that are less economically secure, but it absolutely is not going to make it easier, like the Republicans want to do, to cheat the American people and to cheat their taxes.
And I think going back to your earlier point about how, Republicans were elected on a platform and a midterm cycle of saying inflation, 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 lowering costs for middle class families. Guess what happens when the wealthy don't pay their taxes? Like when the wealthy don't pay their taxes, middle class families, lower income families have to pick up the slack. And that's what's going to happen if
Right. It's the burden on
these
them.
exactly. That's what's going to happen if these cuts are allowed to stand to the IRS. And thankfully, I don't think that the Senate will let this happen. But it is really a wake up call to see, like, show me what you. Oh my gosh, what's that saying? Hold on. It's like not do as I say, not as I do. I feel like that's totally what we're seeing right
I feel like
now.
that is applicable here though. It's like the kind of they're putting like the blinders up. They're saying like, "Oh, don't look over here. Like don't look at us. Like we're going to make it easier for the American people in terms of like lowering the cost of taxes, etc." But really what that's going to do is just make it easier for these people with more complex taxes to shift their burden onto like the less economically secure. So I think that that was a perfect saying to go along with the chaos of this.
So now to wrap up today's episode, we've got a special guest joining us. We've got Linda Benish to talk to us about gas stoves.
Yeah, so gas stoves, right? This is absurd. So one person in a Biden administration agency made an offhand comment based on a new study that shows that about 12% of childhood asthma might be based on gas stoves, saying, like, hey, maybe we want to have some new safety standards here, maybe we want to do something. And so Fox News and the entire right wing propaganda apparatus turned that into Joe Biden is personally going to come into your house and rip your gas stove from your cold, dead hands.
Of
Right? It's
course.
amazing.
So they kind of think
Um,
that he's going to be like the Kool-Aid man and just like bust through your wall and take your stove. That's
I thought of
reasonable,
like
sure.
Santa or like the Grinch coming down from the chimney. Like pulling that gas stove up, we are out of there.
and it says a lot about these people. They think that they're going to lose a fight to Joe Biden, right? Like if they want to keep their
That's true.
gas stove, he's just going to hulk out and take it away.
I do remember the pop stories on the campaign trail. Anybody remember that? Very, very niche joke. I'll see if I can find a reference. Corn pop, yeah. Our producer popped in. It's corn pop guy that he would like fight when he was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't mess with Biden, I guess.
But it's really astounding how the right wing media apparatus can turn what should be a public health issue into, a culture war crisis. Like this really, it should just be about children's health, which is something that you would think that all of us could still come together, care about, that doesn't need to be a partisan issue. Instead, it's become culture war fodder, and that really says a lot about where our country is and where the Republican Party is. Just another thing is that, in fact, most people in red states don't have gas stoves. The states with the most gas stoves are places like New York and California. And so this is really encouraging Republican voters to get riled up about Joe Biden taking something that very few of them even own in the first place. Like, I'll be interested to see, is this going to lead to a run on gas stoves in red states? Are people going to be going out and buying something, maybe getting their house rewired just to make their own children at higher risk of asthma to own the libs? I hope not,
I
but I
mean,
wouldn't be that
that would be the
surprised.
least surprising. Yeah, that would be the least surprising thing that I think we've ever seen. And we've already seen a lot of memes come up from, right wing personalities and politicians about, having to pry the stoves from their cold dead head. Don't tread on my stove flags and just insane stuff like that. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised. Something that I would love to hear your thoughts about is following the money because we all know who benefits from Americans and Republicans going to bat for the use of gas in our homes.
Yeah, that is extremely true. That it's the oil and gas industry that really has been pushing this propaganda for decades about gas stoves. Like in the past few years, they've been paying Instagram influencers to use the hashtag cooking with gas and talk about how superior it supposedly is. And so there's a real financial incentive for the gas industry here, especially because The truth is that cooking is a relatively small percentage of what most homes that are wired for gas use the gas for. Um, it's like other things like heating, but people don't actually notice a difference for the most part based on whether their heating is controlled by gas or electric. And so the thing that's stopping them from getting their home rewired is actually that they want to keep their gas stoves. And so the gas industry has a lot at stake here.
All right. Well, I think this was a pretty successful episode. We had a lot to talk about. I think if there's one central theme to take away from this week's note, it's that whether it comes to Biden documents or the IRS or even gas stoves, take what Republicans are saying with a grain of salt because a lot of what they say has its own agenda. All right. Well, thanks, Rhett. Thanks, Linda. And we'll catch y'all next time.